I affirm, Part 1 is the war on criminals. The CJS is unequivocally a tool of white supremacy. The law is not colorblind. Prisons are a machine for racist violence. Levitt 12. The staggering increases due to drastic expansion was considered criminal conduct. Racially disproportionate imprisonment dates back to the 13th Amendment. There's assistance to subordinate free blacks. The racialized construction of crime is ingrained in America's criminal legal system remains a driving force behind imprisonment. Law and order policies invoke racist imagery linking criminal behavior with black conduct. Queer individuals, especially those of color, face extreme discrimination and targeting from the law. Levitt 2. Queer and trans people, especially of color, experience continued institutionalization of severe violence in the legal system. Queeralized or criminalized for such constructing categories of crime which escape the heteronormative expressions are acceptable. Deviant identities are criminal. Queer people arrested in alarming laws such as lewd conduct, public indecency, and loitering. The law is an indeterminate myth created by elites and does not carry normative relevance. Butler 95. Any result can be derived from the pre-existing legal doctrine. Law is indeterminate, incapable of neutral determination. When judges decide cases, they choose legal principles to determine particular outcomes. Blacks are not afforded the benefit of the rule of law. Think slavery and a republic dedicated to all men are equal. The law supported segregation even after the 14th Amendment. That the rule of law corrected some of the large holes as evidence more of its malleability than of its virtue. The rule of law had in the first place justified the holes. If the rule of law is a myth, it's not applicable to African Americans. Blacks and other minorities lack the political clout to have an equal say. The law thus does not protect society's interests, but merely that of those in power. Butler 2. Viable democracy assumes that the group has the power to influence legislation. Blacks have low economic status are the object of prejudice that makes it difficult to form coalitions. Blacks are not able to achieve substantial progress through electoral politics. Legislative bodies persistently disadvantage minority and encompass conscious exclusion and prejudice. Majority are not capable to identify the interests with those of the minority. The homogenous majority transforms majority rule to majority tyranny. Part 2 is framing. You cannot separate the resolution from its history, where ethics must be informed by the injustice of empirical institutions, because abstracting away from that makes real solutions to oppression impossible. Curry 14. Despite the pronouncement debates point to real consequences, justice is sociological realities is a consequence of one ideal theory over the other. Performance style and LD is a considerable chasm between actual problems, and we frame such problems theoretically. This gap threatens any real discussion about the concrete nature of oppression. We cannot suggest that social problems, which are constantly emerging beyond the effects of the observer, totalizable within a frame. And considering only the consequences of our actions as totalizing because tries to connect all of our actions to general harms, we should discuss individual jurors' roles in unjust systems to better understand the situation at the material level. Addressing injustices means every act of resistance is important. Must refuse to be complicit in injustice. Perverselius 89. Shunning does not assume that the resulting cause will change behavior. One is a duty prima facie not only to avoid violating rights, but to support that moral order. These moral community people reinforce moral behavior and raise the overall level of morality. Where this moral order to disintegrate, there will be much more violation of rights. Resisting each instance of oppression is key because it is the right thing to do. Intervening actors means the gap is prior to hypothetical impact scenarios. Gaworth 83. Respect for persons is an obligation so fundamental, cannot be overridden even to prevent evil consequences. There's a causal connection between some action and harm. More responsibility is removed if there intervenes some other action or actor who intends to produce Z. This intervening action is a more direct cause. MLK was repeatedly told that he was morally responsible for the riots that ensued. It was King's opponents who were responsible because the intervention operated in sufficient condition. Thus, the standard is resisting oppression. Your role as an educator additionally mandates fighting against the genocidal prison system. Rodriguez 10. Teachers and students are part of the British regime seduction its abolition through teaching liberatory common sense. The abolitionist teacher must be willing to occupy the difficult position of political leadership in the classroom. How can a teacher expect students to inhabit an abolition position unless the teacher embodies that very same desire? Reproducing the profound systemic violence of the U.S. nation-building project, teachers are hailed to portray genocide management. And a model of survival tactics is best to avoid co-option from the system and create resistance. Munoz 99. Bad subjects attempt to resist dominant ideology and rebel. The danger would be counter-interpretation that such a system installs that validates the dominant ideology. Disidentification works on and against dominant ideology. Instead of attempting to break free to an inescapable sphere to transform a cultural logic from within, laboring to enact permanent structural change while valuing local resistance. Part 3 is resistance. In the United States criminal justice system, jury nullification ought to be used in the face of perceived injustice. To vote guilty when one sees the law as unjust is to be complicit in the system of oppression. Being merely a fact finder of the law is to seek power to the government, so juries need to nullify as a check against injustice. Z08. A potential juror is presented with two options. If she chooses to advocate, she's given endorsement to another who has no qualms about the morality of the law. The other option is to nullify. If the state is wrong in laws, if the laws of the natural wrong, then participating in a system which implements them is also wrong. A jury willing to apply the laws without regard for morality is biased in favor of the state. Determining the facts while knowing this can lead to only one outcome is to make itself a part of such a conclusion. Jury nullification also serves as a tool to fight back against queer criminalization. Goodman 15. Jury nullification is exercising conscious right in helping engage human beings to subvert the criminal punishment system to fight against structural racism and protect the policing of deviant sexual identities. When queer and homeless people are on trial for survival crimes, vote not guilty. When queer and trans people are charged with homicide for defending themselves from hate crimes, vote not guilty. The jury is where the people can disrupt state violence. Jury nullification serves as part of a larger movement with revolutionary potential. It's not a reform or legitimization of the CJS, but a radical stance against it. Verlo 15. Jury nullification is not about reforming the prison system. Jurors can upset the whole racist classes apple cart. Ordinary citizens can refuse to be a part of the prison system. Jury nullification doesn't reform the law so much as exploded from within. Mafia, the legislature. Juries will have the pitchforks, will be the pitchforks and torches the riot police can't stop. You want to make Black Lives Matter, put them in the hands of subversive jurors. Take away the authority of the police state by denying them guilty verdicts. The war is over if you want it. People with truly bad intentions will quit either way, with or without nullification. Rodney King, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, and others prove, but increased nullification is good either way. Butler 95. Often, white people do nullify. White jurors acquitted the police officers who beat up Rodney King. There's no reason my proposal should cause white jurors to acquit white defendants any more frequently. White jurors will be choosing to opt out of the CJS. For pragmatic political purposes, that would be excellent. Waiting for the system to reform itself is a guise for white supremacy. Only those who are privileged enough to have never experienced the tangible effects of racism can make this type of a claim. Collins 09. The percentage of black men in jail reflects disparate impact. Prison is the breeding ground for recidivism, rape, and AIDS. Wait has almost always meant never. This is easy for those who have never experienced and felt the stinging pains of segregation to say wait, but when you have seen policemen kill your black brothers and sisters, you will find it difficult to wait. And the majority of African American men will be in prison. Jury nullification is also key to have people having an equal voice in society. Delane 13. Nullification advocates argue this needs resistance to government oppressing people with ridiculous laws. Criminal laws meet with popular propagation in the abstract, but revulsion when they apply concretely to neighbors. Laws of unknown to the vast majority are untethered from popular sovereignty. To humiliate this democratic, allow people back in when such laws are applied to particular defendants. Lastly, high theory that the concrete solution dooms critique to failure by abstracting from details necessary for a workable alternative. Bryant 12. What given existing conditions are we to do at least activities are making real difference? To reject them altogether is the worst form of abstraction. Is good at caring. The left is good at caring critique. Say it's not social form, and yet poor proposing realistic alternatives. Phase 1, ultra radical critique. Phase 2 is question mark. Phase 3 is revolution and complete social transformation. Often the critiques articulated at phase 1 are right. Additionally, AF gets RBIs, 8 points AF flex, not typically collapse on either layer, so AF needs to collapse on either layer, AF more soup, consumption, also AF needs RBIs to gauge theory, but also is reciprocity, it's only neck can reach people AF burden, so it's AF can reciprocally respond to the RB to comp sec, and next unique avenue to the ballot. Let's say front. So not the C point below. Everything else is red.
What C point?
Oh, did I even flash you the RBIs? Do you want them?
Alright. Alright, is everybody good?
Mm-hmm.
The 1AC Curry evidence says that it says, quote, pointing to real world consequences is good, and then the line after that is considering only consequences is totalizing. Can you reconcile this contradiction?
Sure. So the Curry argument isn't a question of looking to like the consequences as in the effects of our policies, but rather the starting point that we adopt. It says we have to recognize that society is fundamentally unequal. People are excluded to begin with. My argument is using that knowledge, our next step should then be to resist oppression every time it comes up.
Got it. The 1AC plan says in the face of perceived injustice, who is that injustice perceived by?
Jurors.
Okay, so that would mean that the AF would also defend things like white supremacist jurors would be able to acquit.
So there are like responses to that, but sure, yeah.
I mean, yes, there are uniqueness arguments against it, but that would still be within the purview of the 1AC plan, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the specifics of the 1AC contention level arguments then. I guess my first overarching question is even if you win that white jurors acquitting generally is a good idea, acquitting generally will happen no matter what. If the intent of the plan is if the intent of their action is what is relevant, then why doesn't what does the 1AC do to ensure that the intent is always good?
The 1AC is not about intent.
Wait, the 1AC literally says that it should be people should intend to prevent injustice, which is what the Gaworth evidence is pretty specific.
No, it's about the acts that we are taking. It's not just the intent, but the argument is the acts should be ones that resist injustice. So an individual, when they are complicit in the system and they see that there is injustice being done, should act out against it rather than partaking and being complicit within the system.
Wait,
white jurors, for example, would not perceive justice as being done.
I guess my question is, under the AF framework, is it justified or is it just for an individual to take an action that they believe or nullify in what they believe is an injustice, but is actually not an injustice?
So if an individual thinks that they would if the individual would be complicit in a injustice or oppression by not nullifying, they have an obligation to nullify, and that.
Right. My question is, under the AF framework, if they think it is an injustice but it is not, what should they do?
Well, not by who. Injustice is inherently subjective, because something that is perceived as subjective.
We can agree racism is bad.
Sure.
So let's say they're going to nullify in a racist way. They perceive that to be the just thing to do, but is actually not. Under the 1AC framework, which of those things should they do?
So the Gaworth argument would specifically respond to that because that's a question of intervening actors. So people using a system... Yeah, people using a system that can be used for good, and people using a system that can be used for good in a bad way means that they are responsible. It does not mean that the system is at fault. So the fact that white jurors can use jury nullification badly does not mean that jury nullification is not still a good thing. It just means those people are acting in a bad way and they are more responsible.
It seems as though that would still deny that jury nullification ought to be used in that instance.
What?
It would seem that would still deny that jury nullification ought to be used in that instance. Or what am I missing?
No, because jury nullification is good. It's just the reason is those those white jurors in that particular instance would be bad. Also, there's we can have that debate. There would be weighing arguments, obviously.
2 off case.
Sweet.
On case, you should probably just flow everything top down.
Cool.
Can you label the odds for me?
2 disodds. You good?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else good?
Yep.
1, 2, 3, cool. First off is court clog. Courts have heavy burdens now and around the ring. One big push causes the collapse of the judiciary and democracy abandoned. 13, current level of vacancies and plain hypercharge more than the existing workload to see. Historical levels growing. Workload negatively impacts justice's ability to dispense justice. The federal courts are a linchpin of democracy, providing a form for resolving disputes in order for the judges to perform their job. They must have manageable workloads, and jury nullification causes court clog. Frothington 10 jurors could acquit defendants if jury disagreed with the law. Nullification would clog the court system with more trials, longer trials, and mistrials. The practical application would be disastrous. The bill would turn trials into many referendum laws. Prosecutors could have unanimous support of the jury to convict someone, and effective IPR, or the courts are key to effective IPR enforcement, which is key to ag, biotech, ostrich, age, innovation, and innovation take resources to bring a seed from the lab to the farm. Typically takes R&D. The current patent system helps make commitment worthwhile. Putting patent owners at disadvantage would encourage patent infringement and harm innovators. Farmers are facing challenges like never before, and biotech is key to food security. Brown 8 Tech determines productivity in food and secure regions. Farming is conducted manually. The difference between productivity of these farms and those using biotech and mechanization is extreme, and food shortages is the worst impact. Massive structural violence in a non-human environment definitely turns even under your intervening actors argument. Cribs 10, living without water create non-human environment, the worst experience people can live with. Inadequate water reduced farming and food production, increasing poverty. Conflicts are a result of a constant famine and violence. Only after you have enough food can you form a government to deliver education, opportunity for women, justice, and economic development. Next off is the rule of law. Dissad nullification collapses the rule of law, transform the jury into a legislative body. Haney 97, behaviors violated according to objective rules. Nullification gives juries permission to ignore legislative definition to conduct such instruction, undermine the rule of law. If we allow lawyers to appeal for nullification, then we move to a system which the order in the court is literally no meaning. The rule of law has about as much force as the Cheshire Cat screen. The jury is transformed into a lawmaking body, and the rule of law is vital to solving disease and terrorism globally. The U.S. gets modeled. Greco 5, the rule of law is so central to everything about the legal community stands for the U.S. and around the world. We increasingly find nations top international priorities, defeating spread diseases. Weak and poorly governed states that enable disease to spread undetected. The antidote is governments, and diseases cause extinction. U9, while vaccines have been developed for disease, new strains are constantly emerging, a process that maintains the possibility of human extinction. The simultaneous occurrence of a genetic drift and shift. The virus could produce a new version. Scientists may not find since influenza could spread quickly. This could lead to a global pandemic, and also turns case marginalized people are less likely to have access to cures, even if they're able to find them. Now the case. Extinction outweighs death violates freedom as the ultimate suffering, takes out all of your intent arguments. We do not need a philosophical justification for the ultimate suffering. That also definitely links into one. Korea evidence says that we should be responsible for the real consequences, not just our intent. Jonas 96, we can make a concession about the primacy of physical survival and conviction of ontological capacity for human cannot really be extinguished. The only temporarily vanish. It is permissible for the sake of physical survival to accept a temporary absence of freedom at the sake is the preservation of existence for which human referently glows even without philosophical grounding. And extinction outweigh everything regardless of probability. Math 7, even if extinction events are improbable, expected values to be large as they include future lives. The death toll of extinction impact is the population of Earth plus the descents. There is a discontinuity between the risks that threaten 99% of the humanity and those that threaten 100%. And no offense on the case. The majority of cases never go to trial, which means you nullify practically nothing. Any risk of a dissent outweighs. The Leopold 97, juries rarely acquit against evidence. The majority of cases never go to jury before most ended a guilty plea, often as a result of an agreement. Instances of nullification are rare enough that most agreements don't change, and even granting the whites control the law by actively protesting against the law via jury nullification, more rights abuses will occur because white power would likely respond by preventing African Americans from serving on juries. Link terms, the Butler evidence in part 3 of the Money C. Abrahamson 98. If things are that bad, they certainly could get a whole lot worse. If African Americans started an open campaign of subverting law enforcement on juries, backlash would be helpful. White power would respond by abolishing the unanimous verdict and redoubling efforts to challenge the impartiality of blacks, and jurors will act on prejudices, empirics. This also responds to your the Butler evidence at the top of the 1AC, or the bottom of the 1AC. Wobarski 96. Directing jurors to reach a verdict based on their conscience, unlikely to prevent bigoted jurors from using nullification to personal prejudice by voting for to convict a defendant based on a victim's race. Two sites conclude when jurors are given nullification arguments, they are more likely to act upon sentiments or pro-legal biases. Juries spend less time deliberating about evidence and more discussing justice versus lawlessness, and juries are poorly suited to make policy decisions, so they don't consider the consequences. Takes out the Correa evidence, and even under your framework turns the case. Warboski 96. Juries are ill-suited to make public policy when a jury refuses to find the defendant guilty, is saying it rejects a legislative policy choice compared to legislative jurors like time, training, experience, and information need to evaluate concerns. Jurors will simply vote their sympathies or prejudices while paying little attention how the choices impact the CJS. Also means you don't get access to your intent arguments or complicity arguments, because that's not what jurors will be thinking about. And jury nullification cuts both ways. It means that they can also convict more black people. St. John 97. The concept is gravely mistaken. Nullifying juries can exercise vengeance as well as mercy. Little shame would be placed on ability to penalize offenders regardless of instructions. Jurors are essentially on their honor. The judge is powerless to overturn a verdict. A judge may jury may nullify by choosing to evict despite having the defendant be legally innocent. Lawless juries have the power to nullify not only defense advantage but to the defense disadvantage. And you increase the drug industry, and black people will be uniquely targeted dealers since they know they can get away with it. Leipold 96. The belief the defense will win the race is hard to figure those in the drug business sell and use drug because they've calculated the cause. The race-based acquittal will change these calculations, but not in a desirable direction. In fact, defendants will soon learn black jurors enter trial with presumption nullification, thus quickly understand the cost of dealing drugs has just gone down, and that means more violence. Drug crimes are not victimless. Leipold 96. The assumption that drug crimes are victimless. The correlation between drug use and other crimes is great. The need for self-use violence is well known. Economic cost is shocking, and jury nullification allows trials to hinge on the ideological beliefs of the jurors, leading to inconsistent verdicts and encouraging attempts for law and civil unrest. Turns to your political equality argument. Simpson trial proves Cove to routine acquittals of guilty people to contempt acquittal as a product of nullification triggered disrespect in many courts and yielded racial tension between those who liked the outcome and those who did not. Also, there is no spillover to legal or social change, which means you do not get any the spillover impacts out of the one you see. Leipold 96. There are not many instances when nullification brought about legal and social change. If we extrapolate success stories, each had conduct based on the principle laws were nullifying created on having to smoke politically influential. Race-based nullification had neither of these, and the implications of the act are obviously destructive, causes more violent crimes and widespread discrimination. You should not just view this as intervening actors. It is something that the jury should or jurors have to take into account when making their decision. Leipold 96. Butler could hardly be surprised if some jurors decided that wise use of their power include nullification for violent crimes. A juror who believes homosexual conduct is sin might conclude that although assaulting gay men is improper, quitting their defendant's charge with that might have the benefit of discouraging homosexual activity. Also turns all of your queerness arguments, and nullification gives the dissenter too much power. St. John 97. The unanimity requirement makes the criminal jury minoritarian. A single member attains veto. The dissenter holds greater power than that held by the dissenter in the legislative assembly. The single dissenter might use her vote to leverage against the others in deliberation. Also links into your intervening people argument. It means that it means that jurors have to take into account that fact, and the jury system is likely to be abused by one white juror being able to convict a black person, and deliberation through law is better than the referendum, and isolated nullification is unjust and unequal. Barbowski 96. Rather than expressing conscious community juror nullification frustrates community's justice, embodying the law passed in the legislature. Outcomes of the legislative process more representative of community's views and random and isolated acts of nullification. There is no reason to believe that urging jurors to judge according to their own moral standards will produce a more just verdict. Mark that last card of verdict, read everything else.
Thanks. Where's the verdict? Okay. Neg defends Squirrel, right?
Sure.
How do you solve the prison industrial complex?
We say that the F makes it substantially worse.
Okay. Why do the dissats matter?
The F makes it substantially worse.
Okay. You can see Rodriguez that the prison industrial complex is the most important thing.
Yeah, and if the F makes that substantially worse, then
okay, that's fine.
Like,
so
seems to make sense to me.
Your argument that so dissat. So you say courts are on the brink right now. This is from 2013. Government has passed a ton of policies since then that make more people go to courts, like Obamacare and like EPA regulations, things that like people would go to jail for or like have to be sued for. Why have these things not pushed it over the brink? Given the evidence is like 3 years old.
What?
Given the evidence is like 2 to 3 years old, why is the brink not already been pushed?
We say that, I think it would just be empirically, we have not reached the brink yet, which just proves our uniqueness evidence more, that we are even closer to the brink.
But if we have not reached the brink, and your evidence said we are on the brink 3 years ago, why is jury nullification more likely than any of those other policies to push us over the brink?
I think our evidence to us would say that those policies that you are talking about are what is about to put them on the brink. So I think our evidence probably, or like your explanation, is probably a justification for our evidence in this
Okay,
case.
why does jury nullification lead to court clog?
It means, I think that the Frothington evidence is just like very good on this issue. It says that there will be more trials, longer trials, mistrials.
Why? That's not a warrant.
What?
That's like the claim. What's the warrant?
Yeah, so the argument is that people would like appeal verdicts because they are more likely to be like, that was obviously unjust, which means prosecutors would appeal it.
That's not how nullification works. Okay, so IPR enforcement, why does that happen, or why does court clog need to, what is IPR?
Intellectual property rights.
What does that have to do with court clog?
The courts have to grant patents.
Right. So international property rights is based on federal jurisdiction or like other types of courts. Why does jury nullification undermine those types of courts?
I'm not sure why jury nullification.
Also, why would court clog mean that they couldn't have other types of give other types of IPR enforcements, for example?
For example, what?
Okay, that's actually fun. So next argument, you say it collapses rule of law. Why?
Because if during nullification is fundamentally like we just don't.
So
get
your
the
internal
breaking the law anymore.
your internal like argument is like pretty terrible. So it says that the
You
rule
just
as
keep
in
telling yourself that.
so it says that government having institutions to like stop terrorism and disease are important. Why would nullification undermine those institutions?
I mean, we say that it undermines the rule of law generally.
Their card is like 2 sentences. Why would it
It's
ever
two
lead
great
to
sentences.
Why would it ever lead to undermining those institutions?
We say that it undermines the perception of rule of law in the United States, which means other countries would be less likely to enforce laws very
You say a
strictly.
majority of cases never go to trial. Doesn't that take out the disads also?
Take out what disads.
If majority of cases never go to trial, nullification is not used often, why would it undermine the rule of law?
It still means that things that do go to trial will get nullified, which still undermines the perception of.
So like the
rule of law, which is
3% of
untenable.
cases that go to trial are going to undermine the rule of law now?
Yes. I mean,
Okay.
I think that's the argument from the 1NC.
Sure. Okay. Why will more rights abuses occur? How can prosecutors just like strike every black juror? Also, like, how would they strike every juror if
Well,
people
I
are
don't know,
against
like, if they get
nullification?
a strike card or what, but they're like, I want to strike that person.
Okay, that's not how the legal system works.
Sure, that's
Okay,
just how it works.
starting prep. Your only extinction impact is from the second scenario, the second disad, right? Not the first one.
That is correct.
Okay. What's the impact of people acting on prejudices?
I mean, I think acting on prejudices means that they're more likely to convict black people, and that they are more likely to let white people go.
Okay, 1 minute. Let me flash. Decides an order case.
Decides in the order the 1NC.
Yep. This is not stapled.
You want to use this one?
But I like mine. Alright. Yeah, if it falls, I might just take yours. Let me write down the time thing. Everyone ready? First, non-unique Obamacare new PA regulations prove that there have been new policies since the unique evidence was written, which proves that there's no link because either those things would already triggered the impact or the AF is not a uniquely small thing, especially cross-application of the argument that most jury cases don't go to trial. It's only like 3% of cases, which means it's not sufficient to trigger the brink. Second, uniqueness says they've already overburdened, which means the impact would have happened 3 years ago. No unique impact to the AF. The clog as they described has already been happening in the years. The impact has also not happened. PFAW 12. The number of criminal cases surged in the past several years. Judges forced to delay the criminal civil cases means long delays for Americans seeking justice. Finally, there's no internal link. The Kirk evidence says that patent cases would be delayed or might not have as much time allocated to them, not that they'll never see their days in court. Additionally, biotech doesn't solve anything. It ruins soil, and multiple cropping is comparatively better. Ulteriorly, 1. Not enough research has been done to evaluate the environmental and health impacts of transgenic crops. Transgenic crops will exacerbate the ecological problems. They're strengthening agricultural diversity. Repeat use and transgenic crops in the area may result in cumulative effects such as those resulting from build-up as toxins in the soil. Additionally, there's a internal link because just because some courts will have too many trials, so there will be different types of retrials. It doesn't prove that individual there will not be federal trials for example to give out types of regulations. Those regulations are also not given out by the courts but by legislatures passing or different types of policies, which means there's no internal link to their impact. Finally, his explanation CX of why because court law is literally nonsense because most people will not be able to just get an appeal because they say this is insufficient. That's not how the system works. You cannot just get an appeal if the jury acquits you. That is sufficient. That is like the last thing. Now, next off, the internal link evidence is terrible. The rule of law only triggers the impacts if the rules are annulled randomly, but we only discuss cases of perceived injustice, and there's no evidence that jury nullification crosses the threshold for avoiding a rule of law, but turn jury nullification upholds the rule of law by affirming community values. Delane 13. Law includes unwritten community values with respect to means by which formal law should be applied. Jury nullification comports with the conception repeatedly described the criminal law as an important check and thus an agent of law really gives federal actors who bend rule of law. Additionally, term legislators pass laws without knowing the exhaustive list of potential applications, so it doesn't make sense to say that they're subverting the rule of law because the majority likely did not foresee the unjust application of the laws. Rather, nullification fills the gap in application and thus upholds the rule of law. Additionally, individuals are not seen as a violation of the rule of law because they are the ones protesting against the rule of law. For example, lastly, I control uniqueness because individuals do not currently trust the rule of law in the status quo. For example, tons of mass incarceration and black policing happens right now means most individuals do not see the law as just. They don't have their rule of law is not applying individually to people. The AF is uniquely key to allowing the individual to rule of law to apply more fairly to individuals and is uniquely solvency. Now, AC. There are two framing arguments that are extremely important. The first is the concession of the top of the impact. The prison industrial complex is really bad and causes mass torture and harms to individuals. He has conceded framing coming out of Curry that we should focus on material conditions, which means that empowerment outweighs retribution. So even if he wins disads about why the AF would let more individuals go, it's comparatively better because it just means less people are feeding the prison industrial complex, which is always more important to break down. He's also conceded Rodriguez, which is a framing argument because it says that the role of the judge is to break down and resist the prison industrial complex, which is the most significant thing to rebel because educational spaces are uniquely key, which is the most and it's a uniquely key opportunity as opposed to its impacts which can solve in other places. The arguments with these reading as turns are not reasons why the AF is bad for solving the prison industrial complex. They are other impacts. They are not relevant when it's conceded AF solvency. His lethal arguments as most cases don't go to the jury, which is not offense because they just defense, but the AF still solves in some cases. Also, see how the DSAT his Abramson argument says white stop black juries on juries, but this there are limits to voir dire. Lawyers cannot strike everyone who is nullifying. They also cannot strike on the basis of race because there are discrimination laws against that. His next argument says juries act on the basis of prejudices, but there's not a warrant for why this is matters or why prejudices would be bad. If people are nullifying at all, it takes down the prison industrial complex and more significant impact. His next argument says nullification goes both ways because people would choose to convict, which is not true because nullification is only for acquittal, not for people convicting. So it's not responsive. Then his next argument says that it would increase the drug industry and harms the blacks. First, multiple empirical examples show black communities successfully rehabilitate drug users, not a unique harm. Leopold is just so racist. Collins 09 major institutional backwards for visa dispair Christian church, Muslim mosque, character building schools, or community stress these issues, support relationships, and local communities of color, provide support system that economically, politically, and educationally advanced members through the track record. It seems that African Americans play a key role in participation of inmates of color. Now his next argument says that it leads to verdicts and contempt for the law, which is not responsive to the argument. I've already answered this about. Then he says it quits queer bashers, but I've already answered this argument because that is just based on empowerment. The last argument is that legislatures are better, but legislators always means mate. Legislators are never changing anything. It says wait when individuals have a chance against injustice. That is, they concede last solvency card in the app.
4 minutes. I'm gonna pause it. You did not read the second Collins 9 card?
Correct.
And you did not read the Del
Yeah.
Okay. says prison-industrial complex is a large terminal impact over like the extinction impacts, right? 1AR says prison-industrial complex. I want to see like extinction arguments, right?
Right.
Okay.
Anything new?
What?
Is there anything new?
No.
Okay.
Order is the case. Maybe the rule of law decide.
Case and rule of law.
Yeah, maybe. Probably just the case. Okay. It'll start with an overview. You should flow next to the 1AR going. There are two big framing arguments. There's industrial complex stuff.
Where do you want me to put this?
The first argument on case in the 1AR is like there are two framing issues. Just flow next to that. You good? Is everybody good? Two things you have to think about when you sign your ballot. One is that the reason the prison industrial complex is bad because of the tangible conditions that it causes. That's the one I see Korea evidence. We will concede that tangible conditions come first, and that means that we just have to win that it can get a little bit worse, so that you re-entrench the prison industrial complex a little bit more, and that is a reason to vote negative. Second is that the 1AR does not extend a unique piece of offense. You just go through and make flippy defensive answers to all of the terms that we read on case, but you do not extend a reason that jury nullification is uniquely key to resolve any tangible conditions, which means that you should vote neg on any, risk of a decide to the AFA to the tangible conditions. You also do not extend any of the intent framing arguments, which means we get access to all of the dissent. You're not going to use your framework to exclude them in the next page if we impact them back to the context of the prison industrial complex and tangible impacts. Now on the line by line. First on the argument that it causes backlash. That is the Abrahamson 96 evidence. Our evidence is great on this issue. One, it means that you're not going to go for try or die. In the 2AR, it says that if things are bad, it literally says if things are that bad, they could certainly get a whole lot worse. Second, is that backlash would you conceded the backlash backlash argument, which is that they would just double efforts to challenge the impartiality of African Americans, which means that they would no longer be on juries. You say that there are discrimination laws, so they would just not be able to strike all of them. That's obviously not what our evidence says. It doesn't say they would be like, we want to discriminate, so we are going to strike them. It says that they would find justifications to strike them by saying things like, historically, they've been nullifying a law, which is exactly what would happen in the world of the F, which means that it's more likely that there are a ton of white jurors and causes white backlash, which means that they will find ways to re-entrench the prison industrial complex. All of the money's evidence that says that we should not trust the way that the state functions, just functions as proof of this argument. And if we win our white backlash arguments, that it definitely, the 1AC is the internal link to re-entrenchment of the prison industrial complex, which means that we have one that it gets worse. He does not get to go for try or die. That argument is also just not in the 1AR. Next, I'm going for the this is like obviously the top layer, first place you vote. The second argument is the second argument going for is the prejudices argument. He says there's no warrant for the terminal, no warrant for the terminal impact because nullifying everything would still be able to break down the prison industrial complex. That obviously ignores the 1AC's argument that we should focus on tangible conditions that actually affect marginalized individuals. So one, there is a warrant for the act on prejudice, or Waski 96 evidence, pretty good on the issue. It literally says that 2 studies concluded empirically that juries are likely to vote on their sentiments or parochial biases. Next, you can see their argument that a lot of white, or at least a vast majority of juries are going to be white, and it only takes one of them to nullify something like a white supremacist or lynching, which means that we definitely get access to these internal links. You say that nullifying in every instance is key, but that is obviously not true. You would not want to just start letting white supremacists out of the prison industrial complex, even if that reinforces the prison industrial complex a little bit. It is better for the larger terminal impact, which is the material conditions that impact people of color or queer people, which means that we obviously get the internal link to this term. You do not get new responses to this in the 2NR. It is functionally conceded. The next argument is that juries are poorly suited to make policy decisions because they have not considered the consequences. That is the Waski 96 evidence. The way you should view this is that if I just missed it and there was an extension of some piece of case offense in the 1AR, all of the 1AR case offenses are literally just people should always confront injustices. But that means our evidence is pretty damning terminal defense to that, which says that they are not, when jurors make the decision to acquit, they are not acting with the intent of stopping injustices, or they are not acting to stop injustices. They are just acting because that is the bias that they happen to have, which means that you do not get access to any of your terminal to any of the 1AC's terminal impacts about how we should work to prevent justice, which means that you should vote negative on any risk of dissent. You should view this as a huge internal link defense to the 1AC. If there's if there's any offense extended at all in the 1AR, you should also be able to isolate a tangible impact that the 1AC resolves, that the 1AC does not resolve, or that the 1AC does not outweigh, which you probably cannot do. Next argument is that jury nullification cuts both ways. That is the St. John evidence. He makes one argument, which is that it applies to acquittals only. That is obviously not true. You do not just get to analytically assert that it applies to acquittals only when we are the only one reading evidence about what jury nullification actually means. We have read pretty good evidence that says jury nullification cuts both ways. It means that if they believe the person is illegally innocent, they are within the jurisdiction to convict them. That means you should evaluate his advocacy based on what the plan says. We say we are the only ones that have provided a definition of jury nullification ground in the literature, which means that if we win any of our arguments about how jurors will act on prejudice, that also means that they're more likely to reinforce the prison industrial complex because they will just nullify by convicting people, which also takes out all of the 1AC, the 1AC, or the 1AR sort of offense, which is that we should just nullify in every instance because then less people would be in jail. We say that at best for them, then they just nullify for acquittals in some instances, nullify for prosecution in other instances, which means that a roughly equal amount of people end up in jail. And arguments that those people are just more likely to be people of color or queer people because of individual biases. Last argument going for is the drug industry argument. The only response in the 1AR is that black communities are good at rehabilitating people from the drug industry. You concede our evidence, or your argument that is about the status quo. Yes, currently they are very good at rehabilitating individuals, but in the world of jury nullification, the cost of dealing drugs goes down a substantial amount because it means that individuals will recognize that they can just get away with whatever they want because no one is ever going to prosecute them for it. You can extend our late-polled 96 evidence on this issue, which is that black people will be uniquely targeted for dealers, and you can see that is not a victimless crime because it causes huge amounts of actual tangible violence, which means that it does reinforce the prison industrial complex. It also means that we get access to all of our arguments about how it creates cycles of crime where people are more likely to end up back in the prison industrial complex, which means that obviously reinforces it. So here's how the round breaks down. There are a few terms extended in the 2NR. The first one is that it will cause white backlash that will reinforce the prison industrial complex, which is functionally conceded. The next one is that jurors are likely to vote on their prejudices, and they can convict people, which you have also conceded. And you've conceded that it causes tangible conditions that are uniquely worse. The terminal defense that is functionally conceded is that they will not consider the implications of nullification when they do it. They will just act on biases, which means that they are not confronting any actual injustice, which takes out any risk of the terminal impact. and you function, your only response to the drug argument is about the status quo, not about the world of the AF. Only our evidence is contextualized to the world of the AF, means that it increases tangible violence. The AF just re-entrenches the prison industrial complex.
Case, obviously. Okay.
The 1AC is a stance away from the prison industrial complex. More people nullifying means less people go to jail, which stops the fear, which stops the feed of labor towards the prison industrial complex. That was the solvency extended in the 1AR, which is sufficient if I beat back the turns, because it proves that the AF uniquely decreases the power of the prison industrial complex. It's obviously just a question of whether or not the turns are true. His Abramson argument says that the AF would stop black people from being on juries. One, he has conceded uniquely that they already do stop black people from being on juries because black juries are white in the status quo, which is not unique, which makes the turn not unique. It also means that there are limits to who they can strike. For example, they cannot strike everyone, and the AF would not just result in them striking just black people. They would have to strike everyone or everyone who is nullifying. They would also not know who is nullifying in the world of the affirmative. These are arguments in the 1AR that were not responsive. Bennett fundamentally misunderstands how the criminal justice system works by saying that they can just stop everyone from being on trial when there are limits and discrimination laws that stop you. You can only strike a certain number of jurors. You get like a panel of jurors, and you don't know exactly who you're nullifying, which proves that they would not have the ability to strike. He's also conceded the cross-application of his defensive argument that jury nullification only applies in 3% of cases, which means that most people would not strike because they would not realize the power of jurors, but yet that 3% of cases is still sufficient for absolvency because at least marginally delegitimizes the power of the criminal industrial complex. Now his second argument he went for is Warhaw's, the argument that juries vote on biases, but he has conceded the argument cross-applying Curry that empowerment is more important than retribution. Yes, some white people will be let go, but the prison industrial complex is a larger structure of white supremacy that causes more anti-black violence than just individuals on the streets, just individual white supremacists on the day-to-day lives. So deconstructing the complex by stopping more people away from the structure is comparatively better, even if some white people stop going to the prison industrial complex, because if more white people go there, it also means more black and queer people are punished. So uniquely stopping people is net beneficial. Now, his next argument says there is defense because people don't act based on the consequences. They don't know what they are nullifying for. This is obviously not relevant to the AF. We agree that consequences are important, so it's not a question of why they are nullifying, but if people are nullifying and decreasing the power of the prison industrial complex, it is still good, even if they don't know why they're nullifying or the ultimate consequences to society. Now, his next argument is that nullification is also about convicting people, which is blatantly not my advocacy. This was a CX clarification that he would be required to get. If he says that nullification is defined as also being able to convict people, that would be a topicality argument, not an argument of what my advocacy is. He cannot choose what my advocacy is. When I claimed it clarified in the 1AR and would have clarified in CX, it's just a question of nullifying people, not convicting people. This is also not responsive because the majority of cases of people nullifying or seeing the laws unjust because the status quo already convicts people who they see as responsible. So this is not unique offense to jury nullification, whereas the AF uniquely increases the solvency. Now, the last argument he has is that the cost of drugs goes down because because there's no prosecution, but he has conceded the Collins argument that black communities are uniquely able to deal with these types of drug crimes because they can recommunicate rehabilitate him. This argument is a direct response to the Leopold article, and is answering this argument. He also said that it leads to vicious industrial complex, which doesn't make sense because if juries are nullifying for these types of victimless crimes, for example, things that they do not actually do with these types of drug crimes, then more people who are committing more crimes and the cost of drugs going down would not lead to the prison industrial complex, so the AF would solve the link to the dissat.
That's you, friend.
debaters for making it to the semifinal round of the Minneapolis tournament. It was a 3-0 decision for the negative from Greenhill. Someone else can start.
I guess I can go first. I think that the problem with this debate, Cameron, is that you're a little bit too defensive on the 1AR and 2AR. I think that the problem is you don't really capitalize on your offense. I think that you could be making more, like, rather than like material condition claims, like pedagogy claims with this Rodriguez evidence, so that it kind of problematizes all of the pieces of offense that he's going for. So like I think that a better strategy in the 1AR, you can still do like the line by line kind of stuff, where you technically answer all the disads, like the uniqueness, internal links, all that stuff, but like start the app with like a framing for why the affirmative should win the debate even before all of these kind of like disads. Because the question then becomes like, why vote negative in a world where the prison industrial complex should still be problematized, right? And I think that if you make an argument for why this particular space is more important, then I think that, or using this space to discuss the prison industrial complex and problematize it is more important, then I think you win this debate. But at the end of the day, I kind of vote on the Abrahamson and then the Leipold disads. I think that the problem is, like, particularly the Leipold disad makes a predictive claim about what happens after jury nullification, or at least race-based jury nullification happens. And I pause here for a second because I'm not really sure what happens, because you, like Bennett, I think you let him get away with this ridiculous claim about object fiat that in all instances of nonviolent crimes, they will be acquitted. Like, that's literally predicting, or that, like, fiat's what the desires or what the perceptions of particular jurors will be. That is, like, abusive fiat, because you cannot fiat what they will perceive. You can fiat that when they perceive injustices, they will nullify, but you cannot fiat what they will perceive, right? So I think that the problem is, like, you let him get away with this claim, but the advocacy of the 1AC is like victimless crimes, and the problem is that the Leipold evidence says that they aren't truly victimless because of the ways in which they cause other crimes that are victim-based crimes, right? So, like, I think that the problem for me was I almost didn't look at this argument because it's like a question of, so even if they go back on trial, they'll just be acquitted again, because this object fiat argument is like they'll always be acquitted, but it's only for victimless crimes. The Leipold evidence says that victim-based crimes will also increase. So I think that you fuel the prison industrial complex because there'll be an increase in victim-based crimes, right? And so then more folks will be in the prison industrial complex. I think that the Collins evidence doesn't sufficiently respond to this, because I think the Leipold evidence is more predictive about what happens after jury nullification rather than the status quo, right? I think that, once again, to answer this argument, it's like, so why should people belong in the prison industrial complex at all? Why don't we analyze the socioeconomic conditions that causes even those victim-based crimes, right? Like, why, like, you have literally displaced the responsibility of society for creating these structures and creating these problems, e.g. the Rodriguez evidence, upon the victim or upon the person who is being forced into these conditions, forced into the war on drugs, or forced into, like, drug crimes and things like that, right? I think that you don't problematize his offense enough, right? And also I think that this Abrahamson evidence goes, kind of conceded, because I think that Bennett, you should be making a stronger structural adjustment claim here in terms of, like, it's not so much a question of it being overtly racist, but the ways in which we will redefine what it means to be able to be a juror. So, like, in the status quo, you have to take literacy tests, you have to do all of these things to become a juror, so why wouldn't the standards just become stricter in the world of the affirmative when whites are like, we don't want black folks to be on juries, right? I think that you can still respond to this with, like, well, if white folk already don't allow, like, just talk about literacy tests, talk about the fact that it's already difficult for particular people to be on juries in the status quo, so why would the affirmative uniquely cause that to happen, right? Even if there's a structural adjustment, the question then becomes, when can we problematize the prison industrial complex? Not so much a question of material conditions or, like, what happens in the real world, because all of that will happen anyway. It becomes a question of how do we orient educational spaces to problematize the prison industrial complex, right? And I think that if you had done that, it would at least be much, much easier to vote affirmative, because Bennett, to be honest, I think that you're not going for, like, the right framing arguments in a lot of these cases. I think that you should just go harder on 1 or 2 of these disads rather than 4 of them, and just go for presumption for why the AF does not do anything, literally, right? I think that you can make an easy claim here for why the AF doesn't do anything about the prison industrial complex, presume negative.
I'm pretty glad you didn't go for presumption. Like, I would not have been happy with that. So I end up voting. I find the voting issues out of the 2N pretty persuasive. I think, Cameron, that your 2AR is, like, really good, but those issues, a lot of the framing stuff seemed at least mostly new in the 2AR, or, like, were new extrapolations of things you had said in the 1AR, and I was, like, not very lenient to give that to you. The other thing that I would say about the AC, so the AC is, like, we need to look to queer and trans people of color, and then, like, the NR happens, and all of a sudden we like lose that, and it's just about like the black community. And I'm not saying that that's like a bad debate, but it seems like a framing thing that you could say in the 1AR that like we should either prioritize these impacts, right? So that would seem to take out a lot of his turns that just seem to focus on like the black community in general, right? I think you should be using your case in a more persuasive way if you're going to read that evidence and spend time reading evidence about that particular subset. Like, I'm super confused about why that wasn't like the first thing you said in your 1AR, because that would have gotten rid of a lot of the turns. Also, Bennett, please number the turns. Like, it was impossible. My flow is horrendous because I just like the turns aren't labeled. They're on. And I also, if you're gonna read that many turns, you might as well say, like, in my opinion, put them on a separate off.
I did that anyway.
Yeah, that would have been, like, had I known it was going to be just that many of just, like, a straight dump of turns, I probably should have expected it, but, like, I should have put it on a separate sheet of paper because it was just, like, it got so messy and it wasn't numbered. And you both did, like, a good job of, like, trying to explain what argument you were talking about, but by the time I found it, I would be, like, on the tail end of things. So, like, please do that. It should not be that hard to number them, but, like, it was just so messy.
Seems legit.
Yeah, so I don't have
Yeah, no.
I don't have too much to add in terms of like how I vote. I obviously vote on the turns. I like vote on the Abrahamson evidence or whatever, the first layer. I think that was probably the best 2AR that could have been given like the 1AR. And I think that really the problems for me kind of start in the 1A in the first speech. So I kind of disagree with Christian's RFD in that I think that the Rodriguez evidence kind of actually makes no sense with this app, because I really don't think that the like link between jury nullification and the prison industrial complex is all that enormous, right? Like I think that everybody seemingly throughout the round conceded pretty regularly that it's an incredibly small aspect. Would at best we're talking about the margins in reduction. So I think it's a little preposterous that is like the central defining structural argument of the 1AR. Is like, oh, he's conceded the Rodriguez evidence. I don't think that that's the strongest. Either I would revise the app so that it does incorporate like a much more serious interrogation of socio-political factors that gave rise to the prison industrial complex, or I would, go for what seems to be a like somewhat like more gently articulated util case position that is like, look, we shouldn't put people in prison and that's bad, and it has a particularly, racialized way that it has been done, and like it affects queer people. Like, I think that is basically what the app says, and it does not, reach the level of critical pedagogy, at least in my book. And that's really all. And also number the turns. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Thanks.